Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most baffling and honestly dramatic aviation mysteries in history. Picture this. It's December 27th, 1991. We're at Stockholm's Arlanda Airport. It's a freezing, snowy morning right after Christmas. Passengers are boarding Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751. It's a practically brand new DC-9. Everyone's just expecting a totally routine hop over to Copenhagen. But, as we're about to see, what actually happens next pushes both human skill and the hidden limits of modern machines to the absolute breaking point.
Just listen to these chilling final words transmitted over the radio by Captain Stefan Rasmussen. Stockholm, Scandinavian 751, we are crashing into the ground now. Man, just try to imagine the sheer terror of that exact moment. Captain Rasmussen was this incredibly seasoned pilot, a guy who absolutely loved flying. He even had this awesome habit of keeping the cockpit door open during boarding just to, build trust with his passengers. But on this particular day, that lifelong love for aviation was about to turn into an absolute nightmare, with literal life or death stakes.
Part 1. Nightmare in the Sky. 90 Seconds to Disaster.
So to really set the scene for how a totally standard winter departure completely fell apart, we've got to look at the moments right before takeoff. The plane was de-iced, not once but twice. The captain was super strict about that, and actually the passengers were sweltering inside because the plane's heaters had been blasting all night. It literally felt like a sauna in the cabin, so a bunch of people actually took off their heavy winter coats. They get cleared for takeoff, and everything feels normal. But the sheer, terrifying speed of this emergency is just hard to fathom. A mere 25 seconds after liftoff, there's this massive roar in the right engine. The co-pilot later said it sounded like a giant explosion. Then, exactly 1 minute into the flight, barely 3,200 feet in the air, the right engine completely fails. And then, the unthinkable happens. At 1 minute and 2 seconds, literally 2 seconds later, the left engine quits entirely. In just over 60 seconds, a state-of-the-art aircraft is transformed into a massive, completely powerless glider. The eerie reality of those next few moments was captured perfectly by the co-pilot. He recalled, "It was like a bird just sailing through the sky, complete silence. But, that silence was incredibly deceptive. Without any engines, they were plunging toward the Earth at a jaw-dropping rate of 12,200 feet per minute. At just 500 feet above the ground, gliding powerlessly over this dense Swedish forest, Captain Rasmussen makes a brilliant split-second decision. He pulls the plane's nose up to slow it down, basically deciding to use the thick canopy of pine trees below as a literal cushion to soften the impact."
Section 2. Miracle in the Forest. The Aftermath. The impact itself was incredibly violent. The plane plowed right through 125 meters of thick pine forest. The tremendous forces involved actually caused the aircraft's fuselage to snap into 3 separate pieces. Almost immediately, the heavy, pungent scent of aviation fuel fills the freezing air. The survivors, many of them trapped or bleeding, are absolutely terrified that a massive explosion is imminent. But here is the most astounding part of this entire story. 0. Out of all 129 passengers and crew on board Flight 751 that day, exactly 0 people perished. Not a single life was lost. When the crew did their head count out there in the freezing woods, they were in absolute shock. Rasmussen later said he was the happiest captain in the world. And honestly, the media immediately and rightfully dubbed the whole thing a miracle. So, the plane went down just 15 kilometers northeast of the airport. The fuselage shattered in 3, we had 92 people injured, 8 of them seriously. But hey, remember those passengers who took off their coats earlier because the cabin was too hot? Yeah, they're now standing out in the snow in t-shirts at severe risk of hypothermia while waiting for rescue teams. Meanwhile, the media is hailing Captain Rasmussen as a global hero for somehow landing a powerless DC-9 in a forest. But behind the scenes, crash investigators from the Swedish Accident Investigation Board were already asking a very dark, very pressing question. How on earth do 2 independent engines fail at the exact same time?
Part 3. The Clear Ice Clue. The investigation begins.
You see, twin-engine aircraft are built with really strict redundancy. You are simply not supposed to lose both engines simultaneously unless something catastrophic hits them both. So by mapping the flight data, search teams scoured the snow-covered fields all along that 15-kilometer flight path, and they recovered 500 metallic fragments. What they found was pretty alarming. They discovered badly damaged titanium blades showing evidence of an incredibly rare titanium fire. Now, a titanium fire requires immense pressure and heat, which proved these engines were quite literally tearing themselves apart from the inside out while the plane was still in the air. To understand why they tore themselves apart, we really need to understand something called a compressor surge. Basically, jet engines need a smooth, steady stream of air to work. If that airflow gets violently disrupted, the fuel inside the engine ignites and violently shoots forward, out the front of the engine, instead of safely out the back. This is exactly what caused those loud, banging explosions the passengers and crew heard. But the big question was, what disrupted the airflow so violently in the first place?
Well, the investigation uncovered this invisible three-step trap. Step 1, the plane had arrived the night before with tanks full of fuel chilled to -20 degrees Celsius. This effectively turned the wings into giant freezers overnight. Step 2, the morning drizzle and snow hit those freezing wings and formed a thick, completely transparent layer of what we call clear ice. It was totally invisible. Even though the ground crew sprayed 850 liters of de-icing fluid, they just couldn't see this hidden layer. And finally, Step 3. As the plane lifted off, the wings naturally flexed under the weight of the aircraft. That snapping motion shattered the clear ice, sending it flying directly into the rear-mounted engines. It mangled the fan blades, and boom, massive compressor surges.
Section 4. The secret software. Man versus machine. Now here's the twist. Ice ingestion alone really shouldn't have destroyed these engines. Those Pratt & Whitney engines were actually designed to withstand ice. Investigators dug into the flight data, kind of expecting to find some sort of pilot error, but instead they found a fatal miscommunication. When an engine surges, the textbook action for a pilot is to immediately reduce the thrust to rebalance the air and fuel. And Captain Rasmussen did exactly that. His survival instincts were absolutely flawless. But on the flip side, the machine overrode him. The flight data recorder showed that despite the pilot pulling the throttles back, the aircraft's computers actually pushed the engine thrust forward to a staggering 110%.
Why in the world did the plane do this? It was because of a system called Automatic Thrust Restoration, or ATR. This was a brand new software feature mandated because aviation authorities found that some pilots were reducing throttle during takeoff to avoid noise complaints from the residential neighborhoods down below. So the ATR system was designed as a safety net. It was supposed to prevent pilots from throttling back to dangerous levels during a climb. The ultimate tragedy of this is captured perfectly in this quote. A strip of zeros and ones caused the throttles to move. They wanted to self-destruct. See, when Captain Rasmussen pulled back on the throttle to save his surging engines, the ATR system blindly interpreted this as a pilot dangerously trying to reduce noise. So the computer fought back. It forced the throttles back up, pumping maximum fuel into engines that were already choking to death. And the craziest part of all this? The airline, Scandinavian Airlines, and the pilots themselves had absolutely no idea this software was even installed on their aircraft. It had just been bundled into another update, completely unnoticed.
Part 5. The Aftermath and Legacy. The Human Toll.
When the investigation finally wrapped up 2 years later, it completely exonerated Captain Rasmussen and his crew. The report boldly stated that they never gave up. They fought for their passengers' lives until the aircraft literally stood still on the ground. So what do we actually learn from this 90-second nightmare? Well, it permanently altered aviation safety. Airlines immediately mandated pilot training for the ATR system so a crew would never, ever be caught off guard like that again. Plus, they completely revolutionized de-icing protocols. Mechanics were finally given ladders so they could actually see the top of the wings, and it became a strict requirement to physically touch the wing with a bare hand to verify that no invisible clear ice was lingering up there.
But despite the miraculous survival of everyone on board, the crash did claim a different kind of casualty. As Captain Rasmussen later put it, it was like having your highest love and coming to that conclusion that you have to kill her. Even after undergoing therapy and spending time back in the simulator, Rasmussen could never bring himself to fly commercially again. In a life-or-death crisis, a pilot has to have absolute flawless trust in their machine, and because of one hidden line of code, that trust was permanently broken for him. He ultimately chose to just walk away from his career.
And so that brings us to a question I really want to leave you with today. As our airplanes, our cars, and honestly our whole world become increasingly governed by algorithms and flying computers, who is actually in control? Is it the human at the wheel or the hidden code working behind the scenes? Flight 751 is this unbelievable, miraculous story of survival for sure, but it's also a pretty stark warning about the really delicate balance between human instinct and automated technology.